afternoon. Wow, you guys are amazing. Welcome back to the World Blockchain Summit. How was lunch? Was lunch good? Yeah, was good? Okay, that's great. I see everybody will be here with a full belly, and we hope to be able to keep you awake with this interesting panel that we have. My name is Jasmine. I'm from the NEM Blockchain team in Malaysia, and I am very honored to be here moderating this very esteemed panel. I will allow them to make a round and introduce themselves, and you guys are all in for a treat because we are going to be discussing about enterprise adoption of blockchain. Now, this is the last frontier. Many people say this is the last frontier for blockchain to go fully mainstream when the enterprises start adopting it. So we're going to hear very interesting insights. Let me just first kick off with Chris introducing himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone this afternoon? My name is Chris. For the record, I'm not Malaysian, I'm not Singaporean, I'm Vietnamese. So right now, I'm a country head of Infinity Blockchain Ventures and also the director with QRC Group. Actually, we have a few different entities all across Asia, like Hong Kong, Japan, China, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, and have it. So today, I'm really honored to be here and share some of the cases and some of the insight we have from interacting with the enterprise as well as the government all across Asia as well. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Fadlan. I'm not Vietnamese, I'm not from Hong Kong. I come from Kelantan, the east coast of Malaysia. So I am representing Petronas. I'm the head of innovation for the National Oil Company. And what I do today is we are actually hunting for blockchain technology. And Petronas is looking for a solution for that. And the only way that we're going to do that is by telling people in the industry that there is an avenue for the hunting mechanism, and it's called Innovation Gateway at Petronas. It's our single digital technology crowdsourcing platform. And I'll explain to you when we go around later on, Jasmine.
Hi everyone, good evening. So my name is Faiz. I'm the CFO and co-founders of Luxstack. Luxstack is a blockchain solutions provider. Actually, we're focusing on high technology. So we include blockchain, IoTs. It really depends on the use cases. But specifically, our technology is we create digital representation of physical products using blockchain. That allows for product authentication, track and trace solutions, provenance, and we've actually already engaged within 5 different verticals. Documents, probably one of the more popular ones in Malaysia. But we're also done in terms of the art industry, fashion and apparel. We've done it for FMCG and so on and so forth. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelvin Ngor. I'm from Consensus Singapore. I was originally born in Malaysia, so I'm not Kiasu. So Consensus, we're the biggest blockchain company in the world at this present point. We, in the Singapore office, part of Consensus Solutions, we make blockchain dreams come true. So we implement blockchain solutions for enterprises and we guide them end to end from workshop to delivery. So, yeah.
Great, thank you so much. So you can see from the panel we have from large oil and gas to blockchain practitioners, to solution provider, to the industry expert, which is not me, it's Chris. Now, what do you believe that the benefits, can you name some of the changes that blockchain has made to your business from a perspective of in the customers that you've engaged with, Kelvin, Faiz as well, and Fadlan, if you could share with us with regards to what are the anticipated benefits that you believe blockchain will bring if Petronas makes up its mind on the blockchain? Yes. And then Chris will share his thoughts later.
If I may start. So we engage with a lot of clients in Singapore, mainly the Singapore government and financial institutions. We look at blockchain as an enabler technology to lower the friction cost of transactions, exchanging value amongst your partners, your suppliers, between different financial institutions, and making putting it this way, an analogy I would like to use is snail mail and email, right? When you had snail mail, it took 3 days to get a delivery from point A to point B. Email, it was instantaneous. With blockchain, we're looking to make transactions near or almost instantaneous. So we're looking to get that leap away from the friction of it takes us 3 days to do an international transaction to an instantaneous transaction, just like an email.
Great. Faiz?
So for us, what we've done, especially looking at, one of the more popular projects is called eScroll, in which we're closely working with the Ministry of Education to allow universities to issue diplomas on the blockchain. But the critical idea that we provide is that, in a sense, we want to provide a platform that guards mission-critical data and prevents tamper-proofing, and also at the same time making the process of authenticating your employees, your people who situation, your recruitees and so on, a much simpler, much faster, much cost-effective. In this sense, we safeguard the mission-critical data of important information within institutional academic institutions.
So Faiz, how many institutions have come on to the eScroll?
So far, we're still at a pilot phase. So actually, we already finished our pilot. So we're in discussion with around, in the consortium, we have around 5 societies looking at this particular application. But really on the ground, I would say currently there's only one. And we actually have been approached by quite a number of cities, but it is a matter of trying to pull everyone together and really making things true. In a lot of cases, the long part is actually the business negotiation part and the approval bureaucracies in between, amongst different players in between.
I see. Okay. Fadlan?
Okay, so Petronas in 2018, we selected 3 core ideas that we need to focus on. 3 new focus, it is collaboration, pace, and going digital. So coming back to the third one, going digital. So Petronas is actually embarking on a journey to digitalize everything that we do and the way that we work. The digitalization will be entrenched on how we approach an idea, the things that we do at work, and also coming up with solutions. Also, through our involvement with Mercedes-AMG Petronas, we noticed that the practice that we're doing are not really data specific. So one of our ventures is to change into an organization that is data driven, because part of the parcel that we learned from Formula One is that the data that is collected on the track are how we actually react and design the car to make it faster than the competitors. So we took up that part of the racing pedigree into Petronas. So there are 3 key areas that we're looking at, and we're looking for solutions to this area. And we've already established a single digital crowdsourcing platform called Innovation Gateway at Petronas. Inside there, we have the section called Technology Marketplace. This is where we will ask, or basically we're hunting for solution providers in terms of blockchain into our organization.
Has there been many applications on that gateway?
Okay, right now we are doing multiple value chain, across the value chain, we're doing multiple feasibility study, looking into the application of blockchain into our enterprise. I mean, there is no restriction on how we want to do it. It's just that we have to match the pain points that is encountered by our company to the solution that's been provided.
That's fantastic. I mean, you guys are not looking for Neil with a hammer in hand already. So you're actually looking at the problem and looking at blockchain as a solution, if it is a possible solution. That's fantastic. Chris, what about you in terms of your observation on enterprise for blockchain, and what are your experiences in that regard?
You know, to answer this question short and simple, unless, blockchain is coming out with a few products that create a whole new market, one of the quickest way to convince a lot of the enterprise is blockchain gonna help your efficiency and reduce the cost in terms of operations. That's usually the way we look at it. But I think when we're approaching a lot of the enterprise, the awareness and the trust in the technology is still not there. So for us, it's not the output and the truth in what blockchain can do, but more like how I can convince someone like my friends next to me, like buy in the idea of blockchain is the critical path. Yeah.
So when we talk about trust, it's interesting that you brought up that word because blockchain is supposed to be the trust machine, and now we are having an issue with trust. Would you like to comment on that, Calvin?
So with any new technology, there are changes that are going to be bound in an organization, and people are initially quite skeptical of change. So there is that element that okay, this is change. I have a process that's working the way it is, and it's working well. Why do I need to change it? Right? That is your biggest obstacle you have in the enterprise. And the way you look at that is to say, look, we are not changing your process. We are enabling new capabilities within your organization that technology enables. Right? So let me give you an example of like enablement, like how you convince people enablement. Cameras on the phone, smartphones with cameras, so that enable people taking photos of their food and of their travel destination, which they upload to Instagram. And if they get a lot of hits, they become social media influencers, which is something we've never heard of, a new capability of reaching consumers. In the enterprise, we look at the same thing. We look at what new capabilities can blockchain bring, and it will be something that we haven't imagined in our existing, how we normally work. So that's how you should pitch to the enterprise, like what new capabilities and what enhancing of the way you do business.
So Faiz, you are actually dealing with trust because in recent Malaysian headlines, especially with regards to certificates and the trueness of certificates and so on and so forth, did you have a lot of problem convincing MOE with regards to the blockchain solution for escrow?
I think the way what happened in regards to our relationship with MOE, the issue of trust in a sense was came from, you can say the understanding come from their side. The education, the interest, especially from the academic institution communities is already there. And to some extent, for us, it's more about making them understand that the process that we implemented doesn't necessarily remove the element of everything that's gonna be there is completely can be trusted, right? Because what blockchain provides by the end of it is this intermediation of trust, right? You still need to implement certain types of SOPs, business process, and so on to ensure that the kind of data that goes there are trustworthy, right? But what we can do at blockchain, we can to some extent, you could say, impose some form of business process that are not, you could say, push to a central entity, whether to MOE, to a system admin, in which it can easily be manipulated, and human errors can be brought in between, and there are a lot of cases, especially internationally, that the data was tampered from people inside the ecosystem itself. So the way we see it is in that sense, right? When we provide, let's say, a tamper-proof evidence of, okay, this certificate was created by this particular time, by this person, I think it brings a whole lot of value, and that's what MOE understands and appreciates.
Fadlan, would there be a huge issue of trust for Petronas if blockchain was to be deployed in some? I imagine that there are already some processes that you are looking at where it can be placed on the blockchain, where the blockchain use cases are actually good for these processes. Do you think that there will be a trust issue from the board level with regards to deploying a new technology, or even at senior management level and even middle management?
I think it's not a matter of trust. It's more on familiarization of Petronas towards that kind of technology because, to be honest, we don't have any expertise inside Petronas that understands technology enough to be applied directly. So continuing from the talk that I was giving you just now, so we're looking to 3 separate areas. The first one is on encrypted data, that is to avoid from us being attacked by outside external parties. The second one is on distributed ledger. Those are the things that we're looking into the supply value chain, making it easy to actually provide the delivery of products to our customers. And the last one is on smart contracting. This is a way where we can actually avoid delays in making payments, submitting invoices, coming out with POs, and getting the services rendered to us. So these are the 3 areas that we're looking at, and we're looking for people who can provide us with this kind of support. And the only way that we can actually go through is through this our digital platform called Innovation Gateway at Petronas.
I see. Wow, okay. Chris, I'm going to start with you with regards to what industries do you think that blockchain will have the biggest impact on?
I should name 2, right? Because otherwise everyone doesn't have enough to mention. I want to say financial, but because it's always there to pick up blockchain all the way from the beginning. But I would say it's going to be supply chain and logistic.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of the, again, come back to the trust issues where blockchain can solve a lot of the problem. And actually with that, I want to add into something that Calvin mentioned before. When we talk to these enterprise, right, it's harder to convince people that already doing very well what they're doing and there's no challenge at all from what they do. Usually blockchain can make a better pitch when they are actually struggling at something, and blockchain can solve that. Actually, you can sell to those guys easier than the guys that doing everything so well.
Yeah, because good is the enemy of best, isn't it?
So as long as they have some pain points that matching with the capability of blockchain, then your job is easier. But if they do everything so well, much more difficult to give them like a new horizon and everything. But go back to your questions. I think logistics is gonna be a huge industry that adopt blockchain solution for traceability or track record of how the ship goes and everything, because it's have big emphasis on the insurance and accident and stuff like that, which is a huge part of logistic industry.
Yeah. Sorry, pass the mic to Calvin.
So I want to add a bit more to that, what Chris is saying, right? Yes, there is logistics, but blockchain will create, for me, the greenfield vision is to create an integrated across supply chain, right? You have your supply chain, you have your financing functions, you have your insurance functions within an organization like business, the cycle. Blockchain will enable us to have transparency within this whole cycle, that we can trace how processes follow through and create an integrated view for the entire organization to lower the cost of frictions not only between an organization and another organization, but also within an organization where you have different departments conducting different functions and having that central language, a central taxonomy where they can communicate with each other and follow that process through.
Thank you.
I'll just add in a bit. So like the way we see at Luxtech, truthfully, and we're fully of the idea that supply chain is and logistics is definitely the biggest market available out there when it comes to blockchain disruption. But the approach that we took for Luxtech, in a sense, is a bit different. Rather than trying to get everyone on board on the same table and agree and implement the whole value supply chain, because in practical terms, the deliverables will be too much, and there's no actual, you could say, discussion, commitment from any sides by the end of it. And we've seen this a lot in quite a number of blockchain consortiums, right? Where people just go in, talk for 2-3 hours, and every few maybe a few weeks, few months, and by the end of 2 years, nothing was delivered, right? We approach blockchain in a more practical sense, right? The way we see it is that we do something with a more immediate, right? Digitization, in which we include blockchain as part of the solution, but not the main goal or the main idea why you implement it. So we provide like a track and trace solution, in which this track and trace solution have a blockchain component, in which then it will be more future-proof for you to be integrated with blockchain to use this when different parties came on board and be able to use that disintermediation, this decentralization kind of principle, right? So because track and trace, for example, is more practical, right? You see, you have problems of product diversion, then you probably would want to see where your product goes, and that's losses on your side, revenues, costs involved, right? So in a sense, the practicality is looking at the short term to some extent, but and then making a piece of the puzzle, and then from there you can shape, you can say, your consortium or whatever idea it is. And let's say, for example, there are problems with different blockchain solutions out there, right? Our approach, like what we really work on at Luxtech, is also understanding the interoperability between blockchain solutions. So we've looked at technologies such as cross-chain atomic swap that can actually deliver and solve problems of interoperability. So you unlock a future-proof solution, but at the same time, you bring measurable business benefits to the balance sheet. Right?
So my view on blockchain for enterprise is with regards to government, where from a financial standpoint, I have yet to meet a central bank governor where at the click of a button they can tell us how much money they have in supply, their money supply in the system. So I believe blockchain can do that. And I believe based on the current technology that we have, blockchain can still improve. Luxtech is built on the NAM blockchain. NAM blockchain is API driven and very much SDK enabled as well. So voting is one thing, money supply is the other thing, but one of the other things that I really like is the supply chain management, because food traceability and food safety is also on that particular set of processes. But blockchain has more use cases that is yet to be developed, and it's up to the enterprise out there to explore the technology to come up with brand new revenue streams, which I believe is in the horizon. So one of the questions that I really wanted to ask is, what are the industries, what is the next step forward for the blockchain industry? What will it take to achieve the next step, the quantum leap that we are looking at?
Especially, I think it should work the same way as blockchain for enterprise and blockchain for government. Because blockchain are basically the new kid on the block, So we have difficulty in reaching out and get to know big guys like Petronas or some of the government agency. So sometimes for me, speaking from our own group experience, sometimes we need like a referral or like a good partner that can bring us and knock on the door of Petronas and, hey, this is Chris. They have some solution for, let's say, palm oil or something like that. So for me, having the right partner working in this space is very critical because maybe Petronas doesn't know us, but he knows the partner that bring us in. It's really speaking from my experience. Yep.
Well, the idea of doing a crowdsourcing platform is to avoid that. Is to avoid referral, talking to people, having coffee and connecting through the human interaction. That is the sole reason where we make this digital platform, so that the submission of technology will be online, that the assessment will be online, that people who actually look at it will be online. That's one of the sole reasons we do that. But adding on to what we were saying just now, applications for logistics is one thing, but in my opinion, I think in Petronas' view, we have so many other pain points in our value chain besides logistics. We can look into the delivery of fuel, we can look into the marketing, the loyalty programs, the Mesra loyalty programs, into capital projects as well, into investment into certain technologies, into visibility of the the products that is available in the market that's suitable for us. There are many applications that we can look into. Into procurement, most probably, there will be one of the first things that we look into, especially looking into smart contracts. So these three focus areas for blockchain is still right now open: distributed ledger, smart contract, and encrypted data, and we are looking for solutions. The expertise is not within us as an oil and gas player, and we need to do further collaboration with industry players on this.
Great.
For me, so adoption of blockchain, for it to be like, to take that quantum leap, technology starts incrementally, right? Adoption of technology starts incrementally, whether it's retail, whether it's enterprise. You will always have the leaders that are first to adopt the technology, whether it be in in the retail sector, the first guys with the smartphones. In the enterprise, the first guys to adopt AI, right? When they start adopting these technologies and the benefits that it brings to the organization and their partners and the competitors start noticing that, hang on a second, we don't want to be left behind. That's when it stops being incremental and it starts being exponential adoption. So the adoption, right now, we are in the incremental stage. We need to prove, as an industry, successful use cases for the rest to see that, hang on, this is how it's adopted. So they are organizations that are always market leaders, always the leading edge, and they are on the lookout for new technology to adopt, to give it a go, to try, put those use cases in, have some success across the board, then technological adoption becomes exponential.
So you're suggesting a slowly approach?
It's not a slowly approach. It's one successful approach or multiple small successful approaches before the adoption becomes exponential. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, we see that Organization X or Petronas is the world leader in trade finance for blockchain. Everyone's like, they save X million of dollars. It's out in the newspaper. It's there. Then it becomes me too. Everyone becomes me too. Your friend has the smartphone. You don't have one. A few more of your friends have it. Everyone's like going to go, shit, me too, right? I don't want to be left out. And that's how it becomes exponential.
Yeah, I'm actually with Calvin on this. In my perspective, the network effect of how technology adoption works is basically you have like a group of early adopters slowly adopting new technologies, and slowly you can see like interest comes on the ground. Enterprises start looking at things more seriously, and then that's where the network effect happens, and there's exponential adoption by different parties, and that's the way we see it, especially if the adoption actually comes from enterprise. So it's always where the bigger players will lag a bit, but that's where you don't take as much risk as you necessarily need when you become the first mover, right? I mean, if you become even if you're a bit left out, the risk there is minimal, at least to some extent. That's what we've seen in the cases of certain types of technology. Not always, but that's what we've seen. Additionally, the way I see it, like what you talk about right now, just now, is that governments also actually plays a much bigger role actually in terms of blockchain adoption compared to other different use cases. Because the benefit that comes from blockchain adoption, especially when it comes to transparency in terms of implementing and enforcing the types of regulations, for example, in terms of matters of traceability and how it benefits the end consumer in a more practical sense, right? Those are benefits that perhaps not always within the interest of the enterprise, but also within the interest of the governments, right? And that's where you can see that's, you can say, the more exponential you can say adoption can be seen, the way I see it.
Actually, I have an interesting example of what Kelvin would say in theory, like someone adopt and then everyone follow. It's an interesting story between Vietnam and Malaysia. So there's a product that we developed in Vietnam is food traceability for mango. So Vietnam is quite famous for some of the fruit from the Mekong Delta area. and we select mango as one of the product. And they successfully secure the solution and develop the solution for some of the number one mango exporter in that region. And then, so we brought the demo of that product and bring it here in Malaysia for some of the event that we host here in KL. And we have a few visitors because of the title of the meetups and everything. So we have some visitor from Kedah, which have excellent mango up there as well. And they're facing the same challenge of exporting mango to Europe or US. And then, where's the origin of this mango and stuff like that. And then, so we engage into a better conversation, and actually the university and the ministry are actually want to work with us because we have the solution as well. And just last week, actually we have another partner, KL based, want to discuss with us more on the later part of that prominence kind of journey of the mango, which is the IoT part. So after you export the mango to some certain place, then what else? So the complete journey of the supply chain from like production to export and then so on and so on. So I think Kelvin is right. It's very important just to have that small success that you can show to people, because right now blockchain are so conceptual, very highly concept, people can't really imagine how it's look like and everything. So if you have something that can show the demo or it's working, show it to them. I think it's make the enterprise jobs easier to make a decision.
Thank you. So we are in agreement in that it is slowly show the world kind of thing, because nobody's going to take a risk, right, in terms of doing a big thing at a go. What do you think about that, Fadlan?
Well, I've had a conversation with some of our competitors, and actually some of our competitors were amazed how much risk Petronas is actually taking in terms of developing and deploying new technology. Because I was given the feedback saying that if it were them, they would prefer not to and watch first before they actually embark on. And we're a little bit on the cowboy side when we want to embark on new technology.
Wow.
For the part of blockchain, like I said, obviously we don't have the expertise, so we're pretty much unfamiliar on all the concepts being discussed today. However, we see value in it. That means we have pain points in our logistics, in our procurement, in our contracting, in our supply of fuel, in our Mesra loyalty programs. We have these pain points, and we see blockchain as a means, a tool to address these pain points. We just need to see how we can actually apply it across. And we're in the feasibility stage, and we are hunting for a solution on this.
Wonderful. Sorry, Kelvin, you wanted to say something.
No. Well, it's there are always market leaders out there, right, in organization. Let me give you an example. Market leader, Amazon. They tried everything. They will try, they will do a proof of concept, and then if it works, take it to the next step, They were 20 years ago a company that's worth less than $1 billion to one of the world's biggest companies today, because they are market leaders. Market leaders will always push the boundaries, whether it be blockchain or AI or different technologies, and that's where your adoption, watching those companies that will adopt these new technologies. They are financial institutions that are thinking outside of the box, thinking outside of the squares. Those that take risks and successfully implement on their on the ideas and their vision will be the market leaders of the future. And then that's when the rest will follow.
Thank you. So I have a question for the panel. Do you think in the blockchain space, where the first comer will be the leader because there is such an advantage in being the first one? You know what I'm talking about, right? Being the first one out there with the phone, when screens came up, it was Apple. And Apple, being the first mover advantage, has been riding on that for a very, very long time. Do you see that in the blockchain space? And is there any particular use case that comes to mind that you believe would be in a good, strong standing position, having a first-comer advantage?
I think the first mover advantage for blockchain is about Internet of Value, so financial institutions, all right? So we have complex derivatives contracts out there for commodities, for various securities products that are underpinned by legal agreements. For example, credit default swaps. During the GFC, people had to go back to the legal agreements of the credit default swap, hundreds pages, 200 pages to figure out what's going on. In the blockchain world, you have smart contracts, legal contracts enforced by programmable logic that when you trade these securities, whether derivatives or securities, tokens that represent these securities, whenever there is a condition that breaches that legal agreement contract that we can capture programmatically, it informs, it alerts. Previously, we have lawyers, right? We go to the lawyers and they will read 200 pages, charge you like an arm and a leg for interpreting your legal contract that which neither I, the common man, or some other man on the street understand what they're buying, what security products that they're buying from their financial institution. So for me, that is a quantum leap from moving to automate that those reading and managing legal contracts and trading them as securities in the financial marketplace. And we're talking about $1 trillion industry, multi-trillion, sorry.
Faiz?
My view is that the first mover, it's understandable to some extent that when you use blockchain, especially you can say amongst different parties, right? Especially because that's where you can unlock real value of blockchain use cases. And it's very challenging in that sense, trying to look that in a practical manner, because even if, for example, you're the first to implement blockchain, as so on and so forth, is that the value that was projected to you or that you thought that would come about wouldn't happen if not you're the only player in that particular field, or a very minimal player in that field, in that sense, right? So that's where, like, as much as you see that a lot of blockchain projects trying to bring out consortiums, the ones that are actually on the ground that was actually delivered is still quite minimal in comparison. I mean, we've seen quite very interesting projects, especially in Singapore, in the project Ubin, for example, where it's more actually top-down rather than just the banks working on something in general, right? So the way I see it, right, the easiest or the most practical approach of blockchain is just to move in a sense where you implement some form of digitalization, then incorporate blockchain as like a component rather than the main selling point of why you want to implement that. And in that sense, there are real problems that could have been solved actually using normal databases, but you approach it in the sense that there are expecting future implications, future implementations that you can implement once more people comes on board, right? So, like an example that I give you for product authentication to prevent counterfeiting, the benefits are clear. The things that you can save, the cost, the revenue that you can make from that is clear. For track and trace to track product diversion, so the benefits are clear, and you don't really actually need blockchain in order to implement those things, right? But the idea that you push forward is that you have this now, that's the benefit we provide to you now, and these are the benefits in the future. Right? I mean, rather than discussing smart contracts and those things, in which those are open to you once you implement the system, but not necessarily something that we can deliver to you in 1 year or 2 years, right?
So you are thinking that, let me be the last on the network so I have the least cost to pay. Is that your stand? I mean, Kelvin is obviously advocating in being the first one in and reaping the benefit of the cost savings and moving forward in terms of how your processes are being done and all that. So you are saying, let's wait for the network effect to happen. It will save me implementation costs, being the last one on in and ride the waves.
Not exactly. What I wanted to propose is that when you implement blockchain, especially for enterprise-driven kind of approach, right? The cost saving that we were talking about from smart contracts, from all these complex interactions between financial processes and so on, it's not something that is very practical in the short term, at least considering the fact that the number of parties that need to be involved, right? Business, I'm for, actually, I'm really for the business. We actually push for quite a number of companies to take risks and be an advocates. I was part of digital transformation when I was in banking as well. But our approach is that the implementation should be balanced out, right? And the implementation should take the risk and implement in blockchain, but the reaps of the benefit doesn't necessarily to be something that's purely on the what blockchain can provide. It purely from the point of digitization might be an enough reason for you to actually implement a digital solution that have blockchain components, right? So that's the way we approach it.
What are your thoughts on this, Fadlan?
Well, in my opinion, either you're first or the last, it doesn't matter. Because the environment right now, speed is of essence. I mean, it doesn't matter if you win today, but if you're not in the long run, you will be made insignificant. You see, the difference between the industry that I'm with and industry that you're with is that we speak two different languages. It's the challenging part is to actually combine these two languages into one. Because I'm sure none of you in this room actually went offshore and worked in a platform before. So same thing, I have never worked on a blockchain project before. So it's the benefit of these two worlds actually will come out with the speed that we're looking at. The environment that we're in is that the speed of technology execution and deployment are just too fast. I mean, I heard somebody was telling me that the progress that we're going to achieve in the next 20 years will supersede what we've achieved for the past 300 years. So that's how fast things are moving. So it doesn't matter, Jasmine.
I have a slightly modification on Kelvin's answer. Yes, the competitive advantage for the adopter of the blockchain solution, yes, it will be there. But not so much for the first guy coming out with the solution, so more like the solution provider. Because right now I see from the solution provider point of view, your competitor is catching up so quick with you that maybe you'll be the number one today in terms of the solution provider, but you may not be in next week. But for the enterprise who adopt blockchain, yes, I think the competitive advantage will be there for them, but not so much for the blockchain solution provider.
So for the players in the field, it's more than catch up, more than first mover advantage. For the enterprise adopter, they will reap bigger first mover advantage if they see the use cases within their organization and be able to implement that faster.
It's my personal opinion.
Cool. Any differing? Yes, Kelvin.
It's appetite for risk, actually. Appetite for understanding, for example, we as technologies are guilty talking about technology. Oh, we're going to implement blockchain into your business. We're going to do this. It's not about that. It's about understanding how the business works and using technologies as enablers of how you can do things better, how you can do more things with a tighter constraint or less resources. Right? So blockchain is a technology enabler for businesses. It's not like we're not asking you to put blockchain for the sake of implementing blockchain. We're asking you to experiment and see that if it does make a difference to how you organize, how you do business, and whether we can improve the business, your business as a whole.
Great. Well, we are about to run out of time before I open up if there are any questions to the floor. My last question to the panel is this. In your mind, if there is a dream use case that you would like to see blockchain implemented for impact and use case, and in Fadlan's case, in all the projects that you see will have an advantage with blockchain implementation, which would you think would have the biggest reward should Petronas undertake that particular project on blockchain? So something for you to think about. Maybe we start with Chris.
I think in Southeast Asia, there would be one application that everyone will love, but I don't think it's going to happen, which is smart voting for all kind of the voting that we have, because it's where it's going to require the highest transparency. That's basically the wish of a lot of the country in Asia. But because I think it's too transparent, so I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, we will never know.
We'll never know.
We'll
Yeah, it's
never
just
know.
my skeptical view. Yeah.
Well, I got two scenarios that I think will be fantastic when blockchain actually touches the business. The first one is the Uberization of the oil and gas industry. That means for each of the 144 platforms across Malaysia will actually call up the service on its own when they require certain valves, certain gaskets, a certain turbine, without having any human intervention. That it will be a seamless transfer of information across from offshore and onshore, and there will be a logistic support and also the implementation there, all automated. The second one is the sharing of seismic data. I mean, across Malaysia, we have, I think, 15 players across. We have the Exxons, we have the Shell, the BP, the Ping Energy, Enquest. All are actually vying into our home country here. So if we can have a platform that we can actually share this data through blockchain, distributed ledger, everybody will have access to it. I mean, this is something that we can actually work on. These are the two I feel will be of benefit to the oil and gas industry.
Wonderful. Great to hear. Faiz?
For us, I would say our dream project would be the automotive industry. You can imagine it in a world where, for example, you have a car title which is issued on the blockchain. You can verify who currently owns the car title. Additionally, all the information related to this particular car is transparent to you. Where does it come from? And for example, especially when in cases where you buy second-hand cars, you can see whether it's properly maintained, properly recorded, was it properly insured. All this very, very, very interesting information that was stored with different parties, not integrated, not exactly transparent as well. And there are a lot of cases of fraud in between, where there are people creating fraud, fake car titles from, you could say, not properly displaying certain types of information to when you buy, especially when you buy second-hand cars. Those information are actually very, very valuable in a sense. It makes the world a much better, more transparent place, a more conducive, especially for the consumer industry, right? So that's the way we see it.
Great.
So for me, I look at society as a whole. So for me, the ideal use case of blockchain is financial inclusion. Being able to provide banking services to the unbanked, to people who had no means to access banking system because of lack of KYC, identity documents, and opening them up to to the world of trade and finance that they previously were denied. And also for the middle class, being able to access financial products that they couldn't invest in because of lack of connections and lack of size. So tokenization, enabling delivery of banking services via smartphones and blockchain, hence financial inclusion, will bring the biggest impact on society for me.
You're right. I mean, and we can see that how financial inclusion, once open to the entire society, has impacted and changed a country. And the only example I can really see is China, because before the likes of Ali and WeChat, financial inclusion was such a far-off dream, right? And today they are booming because of an enablement as simple as that. So thank you. We've run out of time.
But we can take questions, no problem.
But we will take questions. So probably 3 questions from the crowd, if there is any, for this expert panel, especially with regards to enterprise adoption of blockchain, because all these are the ones doing the work in terms of integration and helping enterprise see a solution in blockchain. Any questions? Yeah. Gentlemen?
Sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm Jude from HSBC. Quite interesting. It sounds like, it almost sounds surreal, right? It's like blockchain can solve everything for us, right? My question is to Fadlan, and you see Petronas is a very large organization, right? And most of the players currently in blockchain are quite small, right? How are you going to decide to put your clients at risk and adopt something with a very small company and roll out something which is going to affect possibly all your clients, your supply chain and everything? Thanks.
Well, I told you about being gung-ho on deploying new technology, but we also do risk mitigation. It's not the size of the company, it's the impact to the system itself that we're worried about. It doesn't matter if you have 5 or 10 or 50 people. It's actually seeing the value creation from the technology adoption. So when we start something, normally we start with something small. We pick, let's say for example, like a Petronas station in Dengkil, where we run blockchain there. We run it for about a month, see if this actually works, then we expand it to maybe Sepang, and then go to KL, and then we go all the way south to JB. That's how we do it. We don't go nationwide in a blink of a second. Just, it's all about adaptation, like you were saying, slowly, and then see how we can grow. So yeah, we're open working with small companies. That's why we created this innovation gateway, so that we can have access to everybody all across the globe to provide us with the solution that we're looking for.
Can I add in a bit?
Sure.
Yeah, talking in the viewpoint of a small company, being a startup ourselves, and we're working with quite a number of big companies trying to implement solutions. So our approach, in the sense, we see things in a practical way, where there are issues in terms of building credibility on our side, right? So our approach is quite simple. We try to build partnerships with bigger, stronger companies, and they the one who maintain when it comes deliver when it comes to the SLA, system maintenance, and so on. For us, we deliver the solution, the development, which is where our expertise is, right? Our core technology, that's where we deliver. In terms of maintaining, we partner with, like for example, like our partnership with DagangNet yesterday, right? So those are the kind of a way we approach, for smaller companies to approach. And we've done partnerships with quite a number of IT solutions provider, public listed companies based in Hong Kong, based in Malaysia, based in US, and that's the way we deliver business in a more practical way when it comes to issues of credibility.
Thank you. Yes, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Vin Sidhu, Vestec Energy. This question, could be to Kelvin or Chris. I want to touch on renewable energy and how does blockchain affect and play a role in the future, whereby distributed energy resources and renewable will be a much more bigger impact with respect to energy.
So there is a company in Australia called Power Ledger, where they enable trading of, you generate renewable energy and you can trade renewable energy directly with your customers without going through a central agency where you can trade with each other. It's creating a new market for you to sell, you as a renewable energy supplier, to sell directly to your customers, right? Without going through a distribution, energy distribution provider, for them being the central party and making a huge cut. So what we're talking about is lowering the cost of friction between you as a supplier to get to your customers and vice versa.
Actually, there's one startup in Malaysia called Empower. It's fairly new, but they're working on some sort of very simple device. Basically, you can put it in a simple term, you can collect, solar energy and then resell it or contribute it. And the motivation that the founder of the project got, because when it's come to blockchain or cryptocurrency, it takes a lot of energy to actually to mine Bitcoin or some of the coin, for example. So the founders is thinking of a way that he can get back some of that electricity and then, you know, like reselling it back for like really fraction price of the whatever we have to pay these days. So quite interesting. But I think compared with some other industry, renewable energy is slightly, I wouldn't say behind, you know, but half a step after, you know, like some of the other industry as well.
Thank you. And one more, sorry, that gentleman at the back.
Hi, I'm Amit. I'm over here with my colleague Dixon. Actually, my question is to Chris. On the blockchain, we do understand that this is a very initial stages of blockchain, and the possibilities are immense. But there's a reason I want to have a question on the voting part, which I think everybody can relate to it. So I just wanted to clarify one thing. Over here, just to take the use case of voting, just now you said, and it's ideal case when, we can have voting onto the blockchain, because we know that blockchain has got a mechanism in which basically it has got a trusted mechanism. And by saying that, we are actually referring, if we want to have the voting on this, then effectively we are saying that basically, if we go on electronic voting instead of a manual voting, still, we can derive the same thing. But yes, there, the element of, something changing or thing is there, for which probably your direction is basically to the blockchain, which will give a distributed trust mechanism in which, it is more, transparent. That's what I think that's what you indicated, right? But over here, one question, is blockchain probably is applicable for the voting? Because if we are saying that, we want to have this trust mechanism distributed, and then isn't it in this kind of scenario, a question of prejudice comes in? That means, the first level voter, when they are voted, the second level of voter, when they will voting, they will actually get a trend line. If we are trying to say being transparent, then they will actually get a trend line, so they will get prejudiced. So will it work in this kind of environment?
Thank you for your elaboration, right? I think it's quite complicated that, like the structure that you're mentioning. But for me, I still believe that blockchain work well in the smart voting example that I say. So basically, just imagine that, like every single citizen was given a unique private key. So that's your key of voting, right? So if you use that key or to vote for someone, it's recorded as that. And just simple as that, you don't have to go second layers or third layers or something like that. Basically, you want the result, you want the input to be, like cannot be manipulated, cannot be tamped and stuff like that. So yes, I still believe the answer is yes. It's just how complicated you want it to look, like to make some simple things become complicated. It's your choice. But I think sometimes you look at a challenge itself, it can be very simple. It doesn't have to make it very complicated.
Just to also touch a little bit about that, because I'm a huge advocate for blockchain in voting. Now, if you are saying that when first line of voters go in, the results are published, and therefore it will influence the next line of voters going in, the results need not be published immediately. You can have the voting and then publish the result at the end of the day at 5 p.m., let's say. So the voting starts at 9. So these things can be programmed without the results having ever been changed, because once the voting goes on the blockchain, it cannot be tampered with. The announcement of the result can be delayed in that scenario, if that is a requirement. And one of the things about voting on blockchain is NEM Foundation just went through our own election, and it is very interesting because we had voting across a few days, and the results were real life, but you can see that there is no, so to speak, influence, and that's because people didn't look so much at the results as opposed to they had all the different time zones being taken into account, because 20th today here for me is 19th in US. So we could encompass and take into account different people in different location to be able to vote on the same thing within the course of a day, 24 hours, but specific. So many ways to be able to do the voting, but the essence is whatever you place on the vote on the blockchain is protected. It cannot be manipulated and tampered with. And that, I think, is very powerful when it comes to voting, because it's our voice. Anything else? Any last question on?
Any more questions?
No? Oh,
Okay.
last one.
Hi, my name is Ming. I'm from Mimos. So we do a lot of research in blockchain. So since the topic's on enterprise, my curiosity would be, what's the thought about the operational and maintainability of technologies like blockchain, which is ever-changing, with regards to the stability of the enterprise requirement? So for example, if there's a update to the chain network, how long do you need to roll it out? What happens to the existing enterprise apps that is currently integrated to it, running 24/7? How do I do a switchover? How do I do a rollback? That's your thoughts.
So with any technology, right, you've got to look at what are your technical requirements and whether you can live with that rollback. It's not a matter of fact of saying, oh, well, we're going to put this technology and it's going to fit in your organization. It should be the reverse. What are your requirements, whether it's like in business, and what technical requirements do you have? Do you need a real-time 24/7 system with rollback capabilities, with like, with backups and whatever? Does that support your what you want to implement? So if it doesn't, then you shouldn't implement that in the first place. Whether you should implement blockchain or not, look at the value derived from from blockchain that you're going to derive from such a technology, and then whether you can, whether it meets your requirements for how you run your business, then you look at that adoption. So blockchain is going to be prominent, but it's not going to be in every single server or every single smartphone. That's a fact. It's going to be where it makes sense for the organization or society as a whole.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, my esteemed panel. It's been a joy moderating you guys. I hope our audience have found value in your answers, and we hope to see you guys soon in blockchain enterprise adoption. Thank you so much.
Thank you.